if you're hosting your source code on GitHub, and who isn't these days, then you probably want to build that source code into some sort of an end product at some point. You probably want to do that using GitHub Actions. And maybe you need to do some custom actions in there, but shoot, all the documentation talks about TypeScript and Python and all sorts of crummy languages like those. You don't want to learn those languages. You're a C# developer. God, if only there was some way of writing your GitHub Actions in C#.
Let's mash on that.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Asp.Net Monsters. In today's episode, we have a special guest with us. We have Dylan Smith of, I guess, GitHub fame now, who's here to talk to us about how he is changing the world with C#-based GitHub Actions. So what's up with that with GitHub not using C#? Do they not know who owns them? Or?
Well, I mean, TypeScript and JavaScript are way more popular than C#. So that's kind of the language most actions I see are written in.
That's bad news, but carry on.
But, like you said, I'm a C# guy, and sure, I can hack out some TypeScript, but I'm way faster in C#. And if I can stick to the language I know and love, that's what I want to do. And so, I've been cranking out custom actions every now and then, having to drop into the world of TypeScript and NPM. And I decided enough's enough. How can I do this in .NET and C#? And if you look at the docs for GitHub Actions, you believe that it's maybe not so easy. The docs say there's a few first-class languages that you can write a custom action in. TypeScript, JavaScript. I think Python's supported now, or Bash. And then there's a last option, which is a Docker-based action, which is meant to be the catch-all for everything else. If those 2 or 3 languages don't suit your needs, well, then you can do a Docker-based action, and you can use a container to run any language you want. Java with the JRE, or Go, or Ruby. You provide the container with all your dependencies and your Java jar file or whatever. And so kind of people assumed if you want .NET, Docker-based action is the way to go. But in .NET Core nowadays, there's no reason I should need a Docker container. I can build a Windows, Linux, and Mac binaries. I can make it a self-contained binary that has the framework packaged into my assembly. There's no reason I should need a Docker container. So that's what I tried to do. I got it working. I did a few other things to make it a nice experience. And I hope we can take a look at some of that today.
All right. So what sort of things, like what sort of custom actions do you think people might end up developing?
Oh, God. I think I saw a slide recently that GitHub Actions has been around for about 2 years. It's kind of the new kid on the block in CI/CD systems. And we have over 10,000 third-party actions in our marketplace as of recently, which is more than every other CI/CD system combined. So, everything under the sun, from like tagging PRs and issues to, the first kind of .NET custom action I published is one that gives you more customizability for notifications around actions. The options for receiving emails on failed or passing workflow runs is not great in the product. So I fixed it and made a custom action. Anything under the sun you can think of, there's custom actions for it.
So GitHub Actions are cross-platform, right? Like you can run your workflows on the operating systems you mentioned, like Linux, macOS, Windows. If I'm creating a custom GitHub action, I want other people to use it. I probably want it to be cross-platform too, I would imagine.
Yep.
If it's one that I'm just creating like for my enterprise internally, maybe I don't care about that as much. If like all my stuff is using Windows, or all my pipelines are using, all my workflows are using Linux, I could probably just stick to like a single platform, right?
Yeah, but if you want to put it out there, in the public for any stranger on the internet to use, you probably want to support all of them.
Cool. So how would we go about building these?
Well, instead of me showing it, my idea was I'd maybe make one of you guys the guinea pig and maybe walk you through creating your first Hello World .NET custom action.
Sure. Okay. I can do that. Where do I start?
All right. Wait for you to share your screen here.
All right.
This is about how much we usually prep for our demos. So
yeah. Just do everything live. All right. You can be treated to my Among Us background, which, as it turns out, my kids share one of my accounts. So when they change their backgrounds, I get a new background.
That's cool.
Well,
That could be
that's all right.
that could be dangerous.
So far, they're young enough that it's not a big deal. I am concerned where it's going to go in a few years. So we're going to have to set up some different accounts for them. But all right, I've got a Visual Studio here. Is that what I need? Or
Well, first of all, let's just head over to GitHub and we'll head over to the org that I created where I'm publishing this stuff at. And so it's github.com/octogeeks.
okay.
All right, so far I got 3 repos here. The first one, send workflow notifications, is kind of my first custom action I've created kind of using this model. The other 2 are going to be the more interesting ones for us right now. The middle one is the template repo that you would use if you want to create your own custom action.
Okay.
And then the bottom one, so if you create custom actions in TypeScript or JavaScript, and you go look at the GitHub docs, GitHub publishes a handful of NPM packages that make life easy for you when you're developing actions to talk to the actions kind of runtime, to get inputs, set outputs, get secrets, debug messages, a lot of good stuff. So I figured if I'm a .NET developer, I probably want some of that stuff too. So I took those NPM packages and ported them to .NET. So we're going to use those too.
All right. So
get out of here. Go back a
this
page. Yep. And this is in GitHub what's known as a template repo. So instead of having to like fork it or clone it, if you want to create your own repo that's like a copy of this, you just click the use template button at the top. And it's essentially going to fork it, but it won't actually be a fork.
All right. So I need a repo name here. What are we going to make this action do? The blog post on Fibonacci sequence, so I'm going to do that. Do you think that refresh button on that screen actually does anything, or is it just like there to make me feel better and it's actually all WebSockets in the background?
Probably.
Not sure.
All right, so I can just clone this?
Absolutely. Well, it's too bad you don't have code spaces. We could have done this all in the browser. Next time.
Don't I have to sign up for some code spaces?
I don't know.
Shouldn't you know?
I just clicked the button, man.
All right, git clone. This one. Trouble for this thing being too small. There we go. Actions. Okay, so we got it here.
Crack this open in your IDE of choice.
Sure. This one. Maybe I can do it. Then I assume in this source directory there might be a project file. There is.
Yeah.
Solution file.
So there's some other stuff up in the root directory, but we could come back and look at that after we've written some C# code.
It's busily opening up on a different monitor. I'll drag it across in a second. Once Visual Studio decides to finish loading. All right, so let's see what we got here. Random object browser. Okay, well, I mean, this looks like a pretty simple project.
It's pretty simple. So what I did is if you were to be developing a TypeScript action, GitHub has like a reference template for TypeScript. And I just basically implemented the same little dummy piece of code here in C#.
Okay.
So it's just so this already has the NuGet package pulled in, my port of the actions toolkit. And you see that underscore core object in there. That is the kind of the core package. And there's some sample code you can see is getting inputs that would be passed into your custom action. It's setting debug messages. It's setting output variables.
Okay.
Doing error handling, set failed will cause the actions workflow run or the action to fail. So basically right now, write your Fibonacci stuff. This is basically plain old C#. I'm not sure how you're planning to design it, but if you're planning your action to take inputs, I would hope we do at least one input to show it off.
blog post up on how to do this, or get some code in here. So here's a really simple Fibonacci sequence implementation. I know that I actually have tested this fully, so it could be fun. So this is going to generate a list of Fibonacci numbers. So I guess we'll take an input, you're saying, to choose a Fibonacci number, maybe?
Yeah, and we'll set
So-
up like the custom action metadata in a second.
So this just returns a string, does it? So I just need to
Yep.
let's go into stuff here. Number and blindly assume that people are passing in proper integers.
It's fine because you have a try catch there.
Yeah, that's also
It'll fill the build.
Yeah, I guess that's reasonable. I might want a more granular try catch, I guess, at some point.
Change the
there's
name of
already
that input.
a-
It's called milliseconds.
milliseconds,
Right
right. I assume this is just like can I label this with a more friendly input somewhere along the line, or is this just actually like the text name of the input?
So whatever text name you put here, it'll need to match what we put in like the manifest in a few minutes.
Oh, okay. I won't get ahead of myself then. So task delay in parse Fibonacci number. Okay, so
You already did the parse.
Yes. So I will
Cool.
just do generate number, and that returns, I think, a list. And then I'm gonna set some outputs, I think, on this.
My suggestion is I wouldn't set outputs.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Output variables aren't that common in custom.
Oh, okay, I see. So this is like, let's get passed through. And
An
then if I
output
wanted to-
variable would be if like some other step later on in your actions job needed the value coming out of this thing. That's when
Right,
you'd use
okay.
it. So that's not super common.
So I will just lock this out then.
I would do, instead of core.debug, I think it's core.info. So debug messages won't actually show up unless we go and fiddle with some GitHub settings.
All right,
Info
that sounds good
messages
then.
will by default.
This takes.
But Dylan, is it a requirement that the main method be async here?
Nope. Nope.
Okay,
I was
it's
just
complaining that it's not async, so I'll.
Just make it a void.
Yep, it was just the example code I had an await in it, so.
All right.
It's basically just a plain old .NET command line app, right? There's
Okay.
no action specific stuff other than you're pulling in that NuGet package.
So in fact, if I run this, other than like, what'll happen, I guess, for core throw problems.
Well, when it tries to do the get input, it's probably gonna complain that
Mm-hmm.
they couldn't find that input.
Okay.
And ultimately what it's doing, the same way the NPM library works, is when you call get input, it's really just looking for an environment variable named in a certain way.
Okay.
Ah,
Yeah,
cool.
that makes sense.
So you could actually test it locally.
Yeah,
then.
you could wrap it up if you knew the naming pattern, which is just like input underscore fib number, set those environment variables up. You could run it independent of actions.
Okay. Yeah, well, and that's nice. So we can get it unit testable. So what else do we got here?
All right, as far as the code here, this builds, I would maybe change that line 20. Oh, you did change it to an info already. Okay, perfect. So this builds, we're pretty much good to go as far as the C# code is concerned.
Yeah, it builds. Looks good.
Okay, so there's a few other things we need to look at if you go kind of up one directory. Or if you maybe go up a directory and open it in code or something, that's what I would do.
We often ask ourselves that question. What would Dylan do?
A good way to live your life.
Yep.
Right.
Okay, so we got a few things here. Okay, so every time you build a custom action, you're gonna have the action.yam, which is the main kind of like manifest file. Let's take a peek at that. So this is where everything starts at. So this
Can you
is
zoom
where
in? Kevin?
Oh, yeah. Just gonna do this. There we go.
Yeah, so you got, your action name, description, author. If you put it on the marketplace, it pulls this stuff. The more interesting bits for us is the input section. So willing to fix that up to match the inputs that you would like your action to take. In this case, fib number, I believe you called it.
Yes.
Line 5.
5 is that? Okay, yeah. Oh, okay, so I can put it from the end.
And you can just, you are going to default it. All right. Okay. And how this, we'll come back to the run section in a second. Yeah, you can modify this if you want.
All right.
Okay, and let's look at the build.ps1 script, and I'm going to have you run this in a second. The way that actions get distributed is all the things that are needed to run that action need to be in the repo. So if you were doing a TypeScript-based action, that means you need to, when you're developing on your local machine, do an npm install, do a TypeScript transfile, do the bundling, and then the result of all that bundling need to be committed to the repo, which you normally wouldn't do. But the way GitHub Actions work, it's not going to do the install and the transfile and bundling at runtime. So you need to do it and commit the results of that. So it has everything it needs to run. When we're thinking of .NET world, that means the exes, the binaries need to be in the repo, usually a huge faux pas, but that's just the way actions work. And we wanted to support multi-platform. So this is just a helper little build script that will build one binary per platform, and it will bundle it all up into one file, which I think is nice. By default, when you build a .NET app, it generates 100 DLLs in there. And not only will it build it into one file, but it'll do that self-contained flag, meaning that exe does not need the .NET framework in order to run. The .NET framework is bundled into the binary.
Oh, so if you're using these actions, like you're not adding any kind of dependencies to your pipeline.
So if you're running your actions on like the GitHub hosted runners, I mean, they all have the .NET framework already, so that's not a big deal. But if you're running it on a self-hosted runner, and we didn't do this, now we would have to tell people in order to use our action earlier in your pipeline, you first have to set up the .NET framework or make sure it's always on your build servers. By building it this way, there's no dependencies whatsoever for the consumers of this.
It's nice actually, because I have some stuff that does Terraform on one of my build pipelines in DevOps. And the first thing I got to remember to do is install Terraform as part of that. So it would be nice if it came bundled in the action, which it looks like that problem's nicely solved here.
Yeah.
So away from requiring a specific version too. Like if I'm doing .NET things and I happen to be on a different version of .NET than your action was built on, could potentially run into issues. So.
Yep. The downside is the binaries get a bit bigger. I think these are 30-ish megs, maybe each, something like that. I believe it does do like tree shaking. So it doesn't put the whole .NET framework in there. It analyzes which pieces you're actually using and only embeds those in there, which is really cool.
Yeah, and I think that's going to get better with .NET 6 as time goes forward, because there's a lot of effort being put into that, largely because of Blazor.
Yeah. So how this actually works at runtime now, so in a minute we'll commit all your stuff, is when GitHub goes to run this action, if you go back to your action.yaml, I could have, and initially I made this like a bash-based action, what we call a composite action. I'm not sure why we call it that, which that run section would look a little different, and we just have one line of bash that calls your binary. But for reasons I don't think we really want to go into, you do a bash-based action, the GitHub agent does some weird stuff with environment variables. So I kind of cheated a little bit, and what I'm doing is I'm actually technically doing a node-based action. So when this action runs, it's going to run index.js, which is already in there. You don't need to change this. All this is going to do is run that run action.ps1 on line 5.
Okay.
I'm just using a little JavaScript shim so that the environment variables are set in a helpful way for me. And then if you look at the run action.ps1, this is the guy that actually runs your .NET code. So this is just a simple little bit of PowerShell. It checks what OS you're on and runs the appropriate binary.
All right, makes sense to me.
Right. So if you had to renamed it from .NET sample action to something else, you'd need to come in here and tweak the paths a little bit, but that's about all you should need to change. Let's commit this all to your repo.
This does require PowerShell to be on the build agent then?
Yes, PowerShell core, but I think that is a requirement of the agent anyways.
Oh, okay. Cool.
But if you have the
didn't know that.
GitHub agent, I'm pretty sure you already have to have PowerShell in there.
Neat.
And to be honest, I think the .NET framework is a requirement of the agent also. So doing self-contained is maybe a bit overkill. But let's say it's because we want to do specific versions of .NET.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
use GitHub very often from here.
I use it all the time, but I'm surprised it's making sign in. I will go and do that. Oh, authentication successful. Well, I don't know.
And
Who knows?
it may need to be turned on, but once you commit this, it should actually kick off a CI build to make sure your code, compiles and all that good stuff in your new repo.
Oh, that was part of your template and everything. Cool.
Let's set it up. Oh, that's cool that it can do that. I did not
There
know
it
that.
goes. So the CI build's not doing much. I think it's basically just running that build.ps1 script, making sure that your code compiles.
Nice.
Now let's use it.
Taking negative 16 seconds so far.
That you got a fast computer, man.
All right. So use it. Okay, what do I do?
Well, let's create a new repo, right? Let's do the real scenario. So you just publish this custom action for the world of Fibonacci enthusiasts to use in their workflows.
Live world people out there. For a name.
You want to initialize this repo. Probably should have clicked some buttons on that last screen.
Well, too late now. I guess I'll just clone it and put nothing in it. Not a problem. Let's see if I can actually find the thing that I was looking for. Okay.
All right, so let's create a workflow. So the easiest way to do that, go to the Actions tab, New Workflow, and you can do the simple workflow at the top, just a start point template.
The main reason I'm here is just to remind Simon to zoom in.
Yep. Thank you for your reminder.
So we can make this a little bit simpler. So in the push section, you can just get rid of everything in that section except workflow dispatch for now. So workflow dispatch just means we're going to manually click a button to kick it off.
Oh, okay. So I can get rid of all of this stuff.
Yeah. Okay. And then we got a single job. It's going to run on a GitHub hosted runner using Ubuntu. And we got some steps. It's going to check out our repo, which has nothing in it but your hello file. That's fine. And then we basically want to call our custom action that you published, right?
Sure.
So instead of run, you're going to say uses, and we're going to use the syntax to reference, anybody's public action. You can optionally give it a name.
Uses, you said?
Uses, yep. And then you give it basically your repo slug. So it'll be like Simon Tim slash whatever your custom action repo is called.
See. Okay, so just like.
Yep.
A little bit.
And then you need to put an @ sign after that, and you need to tell it a specific git ref. So if you were publishing this for real, you'll probably have like v1 and v1.1 tags on your repo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you don't, but branches also count as a git ref. So we can just say @main.
Main. Oh, okay. Perfect. Sure.
And then you need to pass an input value. You have a default, so technically you don't need to. But if you wanted to, you need to say with : not quite.
Oh, here. Okay.
You need to put a with section, and then under that and indented in one level, then it's name : value.
A dash in front of it?
You don't need a dash.
Really?
You do need 2 spaces.
All right, so just like that. I think, did we call it click number? I feel like that's what we called it. Yes.
Yep.
We did there, and then hopefully we use the same name in the actual CS code too. Whew. All right.
All right, and that should be it.
All right. See what happens.
So we changed it to a manual trigger, so you're going to need to unclick the button. So just pick.
That's it here. Run workflow.
Yep.
Whew. Pretty excited about this.
Me too.
All right.
Oh. Started negative 25 seconds ago.
I think your computer time is off. That's my theory on that.
That sounds like it might be a thing.
It's different than my time.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
Fib is broken. Okay, so what do we see here? It's not recognized as a name as a command for that functional script file or executable program.
I'm looking.
That's cool, right? Run action. Does that work?
It's obviously running your.
Yeah, it's got through this bit, right? So it's failing on this line. It's my feeling.
Okay. Oh, this is embarrassing. Let me take a look at. You're my testing guinea pig.
What kind of agent are we running on?
1.2.
Yeah.
If I look at.
Does it need this dot slash? I guess it's probably not gonna hurt.
// well, one thing we can try is we can just run a quick test in the actual action repo.
Okay, let's do that.
So basically, you can take that whole workflow file you just generated and copy and paste it into your other repo. And then we can run it as a local action. I don't know why that would make a difference, but maybe it'll teach us something.
Notice this build has failed. No, even what that has to do with.
Oh, the CI build that I had there is basically also doing a test based on what used to be in the sample action. Previously, it was setting an output variable. And my CI build is testing that it's working properly.
Okay.
So actually, I forgot that I'm doing that. So if we already got a test in there, we can probably just edit that CI workflow that's already in there to test yours. And in fact, since I have a test in there already, it should have already tried to run yours. So if we look at the error log that you just had up a second ago.
This one here? No.
No, in the action repo. And look, let's take a look at that failed build. So this should have tried to actually run your run action.
Oh, so some of you have milliseconds still.
No. I think it's just the test here. Oh, yeah, we do need to change this.
Definitely gonna leave that as 5,000. That will very easily overload Fibonacci.
Yeah. And while you're in there, you might want to delete the test output section.
All right, okay.
Because you're not sending any outputs. And you get rid of that shell.
Part of it too, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Descriptive commit comments. That's where we're rolling today.
That task is explicitly specified in the PowerShell shell. I don't know if that has anything to do with.
That's just when it builds the code. We'll see what happens here.
Get a push. Not push. Oh, I'm in the wrong thing here. Just use this. My workflows are so weird. Like I do my commits over here, but then I do pushes down the terminal. It's just pure chaos around here. All right, so actions, fixes is running.
I suspect what was happening is I have a bug in how I do the paths. I bet you when you run the action locally, like we're doing here, the current working directory is like the root of the repo. But when you're consuming it from another workflow, the root of the repo doesn't have your actions code. It's often like an actions, downloaded actions folder. So I probably just got to put some special path variable in front of it. And I could have swore I tested that, but apparently not.
Okay.
Oh, we can have that all fixed up before this actually gets published. So
Absolutely.
So generating up to 5 and then 5, which doesn't feel to me like the Fibonacci number, but
it's a number.
oh, it actually is. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5. Yeah.
1, 1, 2. Well, send something else into it. Let's make sure it's working.
Sure. Yeah, and then we're sending 5. I actually thought this thing returned an array. Oh, that's running. Let's take a look here at that code. It's possible that I have some typos in it. I don't know if I actually ran this test. Return fib. Yeah, it should be returning an array. Oh, I didn't actually assign a variable to it.
Right.
I'll throw like a compile error.
Oh, wait, I'm surprised string join worked when you didn't pass it
Me
in
too.
enumerable.
What's up with that?
I think there's a params overload on that one, but
yeah.
you can just give it like a list of things comma separated, not as an array. List of arguments. So it really was all lies.
That's why we have this fabulous named repo. Yeah. All right, so let's put a couple of builds running now. So finish that one. This one's in progress.
And what happens when you run a workflow and you're referencing like third-party actions, like we are here, when the workflow starts in that setup job step, it's actually going and downloading all the actions repos. So if you're on GitHub hosted runners, that's all going to be super quick. If you're on self-hosted runners, and our custom action has 50 megs of binaries, it's still usually pretty quick. But on self-hosted runners, it'll cache it. So the next time your custom action is used on that same machine, it won't need to download it again.
This is probably going to be a very popular action for people to use. So it's going to end up cached on almost all the machines in GitHub's built farm.
So in this case, it's building the 3 different binaries because it's doing a self-contained build. It's a little bit slower than usual. Hey, that's looking better.
A little bit more like it. All right, looks like my Fibonacci started at 0, so we would have been wrong anyway. All right, so then back over here in this test one, we can go and rerun this, right?
No, that's not going to work because I'm going to have to fix a bug.
Oh, okay.
It's going to take me more than a couple minutes. I just need to change the path. It's not /PowerShell script. It's /actions working directory /PowerShell script or something like that. But before this video goes out, I'll fix that up. Simple fix. I just don't know what the variable is off the top of my head.
Yeah, that looks pretty good. I mean, that's going to run it nicely, and that this action could do basically anything, right? Like, are there any limitations about what I can do in my actions?
Nope. If you can do it in C#, you can pretty much do it. And I tried to make it like so that the C# code has nothing like special going on. It's just a C# CLI app.
So I can mine Bitcoin with it?
Oh boy.
That's a whole other topic.
GitHub will not be happy with you.
Fortunately, I'm pretty sure that Bitcoin's going to end up with everybody involved in some sort of giant Ponzi scheme in jail at some point. So I'm going to steer clear of that for now. But yeah, I mean, that sounds amazing. So I can just write anything I want, any C# code I want. So that's good because that surfaces like the wide environment that is all the C# libraries in the world combined that I can bring in to these actions here, passing XML, sending emails, all sorts of stuff.
Yep. And if you want to see, a little bit more fleshed out action other than like the milliseconds hello world one, in that same OctoGeeks org, I have one of mine that's reading in YAML files and sending emails and doing a bunch of stuff.
Take that one real quick, yeah. Source.
All right, but ultimately start. It's just a CLI app. I'm grabbing a handful of input variables.
All right, so connecting to an SMTP server, loading configuration files, sending emails. Yeah, I mean, this looks.
Yeah, but other than those lines to grab the input variables, this is just a plain old C# app.
Yeah, so it would be easy to test. And you really just need to wrap this stuff, and away you go.
Yep.
All right, super. Well, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode and walking us through how to build GitHub Actions in a sensible language. Sorry, JavaScript. Why don't you figure out anything and then come back and argue with me? So thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see everybody next week on another episode of the ASP.NET Monsters.